Part 3, Section 4. Political allocation is much different than market allocation. Okay? So, one thing we have to realize when it comes to politics, I mean, hey, we're in an election season right now. Okay? There's this idea of rational ignorance, where people are ignorant about their choices, and it's rational for them to do so. Well, what we mean by that is that when we say rational in economics, we mean that people are behaving according to the incentives that are placed in front of them. Yeah? So, when you're a voter, really, what's the benefit that you're going to get? If you do all the research in the world in order to find out who the candidates who are best going to change the world in which way you would like them to, what effect is that really going to have on the outcome of the election? And what effect is that going to have on your life, right? So, I mean, the benefits of leaving that state of ignorance are far outweighed by the cost, right? So, really, when we get down to this, this political application we'll start talking about later with democracy in itself is kind of designed where you have a bunch of ignorant people voting on how things should be allocated. Okay, yeah, this is kind of falling into the, we're looking at behaviors in economics, right? So, think about this here. Which one are you more likely to actually go out and do research, okay? Electing a state official, whether it's a president, or a congressman or congresswoman, or if we're talking a literal, the state of Indiana, where I live, electing a state official, in that case, like a state legislator or a governor, or maybe a local one, like a mayor, what scenario is going to move across more? Voting for a state official or, buying a car? When you're doing the research to become not ignorant, which one is going to help you the most? Well, I mean, doing the research to find out what cars to buy, that's actually going to impact your life in such a greater way than doing research about, even the smallest of office near you, right? Even, voting for like a mayor, yeah? You're more likely to have your life impacted when you're researching to find out what car to buy than researching which mayor to vote for, yeah? So because of rational ignorance, many voters remain ill-informed. Really, the only reason why people will become informed is because of politics recently being turned into entertainment, right? Or because they just enjoy politics and they're informed because of that, not because they feel like they have a civil duty to be involved, right? And there's also the key difference that, the car you vote for, this is a very, very important distinction that you're making, Darth, and one we're going to make later. The car that you do the research on and end up buying, you get that car, right? Whereas in an election, it's winner take all. So, all that research you may do may be for naught because the person you find out you like may not even end up winning, right? So, when it comes to the political process, this is just simply put, it's an alternative to the market process, right? The market process determines what items we have based on whether or not enough consumers find that it is worth paying the higher cost relative to pay the higher price relative to the cost to make that product. Okay, it's just instead of using just the invisible hand to decide what to produce, we're now using democracy, majority plus one. All right, a majority is half the population plus one. Boom, we have a majority formed. Right, that's how we're deciding what's being made. Right, it's not really a corrective device. It doesn't have a corrective device, right? Markets have a corrective device. If we have, a business that's making losses, they eventually have to either shape up and become a better business and start making profits, or they have to stop, right? And that's how we stop doing things that are not productive. Whereas in the political process, there's nothing to stop bad things from happening over and over and over again, right? It doesn't have to be productive for people to vote for it, yeah? It just has to get that majority, that half plus one, yeah? So, if we compare and contrast democracy versus markets, we can see that there's actually two big differences. And I think one is largely how much violence the government can use versus how much markets can use. When we're using markets to supply things, if Walmart's selling something and you don't want it, you don't have to have it, right? You just walk away, right? If the government's giving you a product, you have to take that product, right? The government can use the threat of violence to tax and subsidize, right? If I don't want what Walmart's selling, I don't pay for it, right? I walk away. Whereas when it comes to government, I have to pay for what they're having, right? Because if I don't, then the IRS comes after me, right? And that's not a fun situation to be in, right? Because if I don't pay my taxes, they're going to come and take me away. And if I resist arrest, then I end up on the morning news, okay? Markets can charge high prices, but cannot force people to pay, right? So if maybe I do want something, right, but it's too high of a price and I don't think it's worth it, then whatever, I don't buy it, right? But sure, markets can do that, but they can't force you to pay for it, right? It's you voluntarily paying for it. You're like, whatever, I think it's too much, but I'll pay whatever, fine. And in doing so, you've kind of admitted that this is not too much. You just think that it's a high price. But governments, if you think something's too costly, you can, normally in a market, you can walk away from it. But with the government, you cannot walk away from it, right? You have to pay whatever the price they give you is, okay? In markets, voluntary exchange determines what happens, right? People deciding that they like a product is what makes a product exist. People voluntarily entering into trades with one another is what enables products to come into market. And as a matter of fact, it's those same voluntary trades that make it so that certain products don't exist. What's up, Sloth? And when it comes to government, though, if half the people decide they want something some way, then that's what's going to happen, right? It's 50% of the population telling the other 49% what to do, yeah? You see, markets also provide varying options for everybody, right? If you don't want an iPhone, you can get a Samsung, you can get an LG, you can get a Google phone. There's all sorts of options, right? But with government, whatever that majority decides, that applies to everybody, right? With markets, there's a lot of variety. With democracy, there's really only whatever the government decides, okay? Just leave the country and never come back sounds like a great option. Well, sadly, government's wherever you exist, yeah? So, another thing that is different than the market process is that the market has this idea of profit and loss. Profit will encourage the productive use of assets, and losses will discourage the unproductive use of assets, right? Whereas with government, there isn't profit and loss to stop those bad projects, and there's no profit to encourage the good projects. So policies provided by the government may or may not be productive, okay? It is not a surefire thing that just because half the country votes for it, or just because half the representatives in your legislative body end up voting for it, that does not mean that it is productive, right? Matter of fact, oftentimes it will be that what is productive is oftentimes not popular, right? Because what people are going to vote for are things that end up benefiting themselves, right? This is why we get to, populism kind of becomes a scary place to be in, because people will vote for things that they think will help them in their lives because they're being promised things by politicians. And, you're going to vote for the politicians that are just saying, hey, yeah, sure, we'll give you these things. Even though they're not really a productive use of our resources, right? Just because the majority votes for it does not mean that it promotes economic progress, okay? This means that resources can be used counterproductively, right? Normally, when something produces a loss, we don't do it. But if the majority votes for it, then we're doing it, right? So it's not ensuring that we're avoiding unproductive uses of our resources, just like how profit and loss do, okay? The costs and benefits among voters and interest groups are disproportionate, okay? So remember, go back to why tariffs exist. There is a concentrated group that get to benefit from the tariffs, and the cost of those tariffs are so widely distributed amongst everybody else that they don't care to fight it, right? They have this rational ignorance. So instead of profit, instead of the benefits being greater than the cost dictating what we're producing, it's instead politicians reacting to whatever's going to get themselves reelected. Oh, you guys want free insert program here? Let me give you free insert program here, and you'll elect me, okay? So when I say here, oftentimes what's productive isn't popular, meaning that, or I should say what is popular isn't productive. Maybe that's a better way to word it. Let's write that. Because what I really mean to say is that the programs that a lot of people ask for, there's a concentrated few that it benefits, but it costs everybody a lot, right? And the whole point here is that, just because a majority votes for it, just because it's popular, doesn't mean that it's a good use of our scarce resources, okay? So, for instance, if we look here, we can see, that'd be a decent example, Darth, yeah. We can see here a good example of how democracy can end up with us having some bad policy being passed. So I want you to first look down here at the bottom, right? Look at the total benefits, yeah? Look at the total benefits here, okay? So whatever this project is, looks like it's building a road. This road is essentially giving $50 in benefits, okay? And it's going to cost $60 to build this road, okay? But there's two tax plans. There's two ways that we can take money from individuals in order to pay for this road. We can tax everybody equally. We can have everyone pay $12, okay? Right? Or we can tax them proportionate to how much they're getting in benefits, right? Maybe, the people that use the road more are going to be able to, they're getting more benefits, so they should pay more, right? That's what Plan B is saying, okay? But in any case, we have to raise $60 to pay for this road. Now, I want you to notice $60, we're paying $60 to get $50 of benefits. The costs are greater than the benefits. According to economic analysis, this project should not be undertaken, right? Because we have $50 of benefits that we're getting and $60 in cost. We shouldn't do this, okay? So, one thing we can see here, if we tax everybody equally, is it going to pass, right? Are people going to call their politician, right? Imagine all these people have different, politicians. Or maybe this is just a direct democracy. Maybe these people themselves are voting. Let's see what happens under Plan A. Under Plan A, what happens? Well, they're paying $12 to get $15 worth of benefits. They're probably going to vote for it, right? I mean, they get to net $3. This person's paying $12 to get $3 worth of benefits. They also like it. $12 to get $15 worth of benefits. They also like it. These people here, Jones and Smith, they're both paying $12 to get $3 and $2. They don't like this at all. They don't like this at all. So are they going to vote for it? No. No, they're not going to vote for it. So what's going to end up happening, you have 3 people voting yes, 2 people voting no. Guys, what's going to happen? We're going to have all these people are going to pay $12 to raise the $60 to pay for the $50 road. Okay? So because of democracy, we've had something that's just, that has enabled us to create this road that is not going to be more beneficial than the costs to build it. Yeah? Something else we can look at, let's look at Plan B here. Okay, now let's tax them proportionate to how much they're going to use the road. Okay, so their benefits, they get 30% of the $50, right? The benefits that are created, they get 30% of it. Okay, so does this person only uses the road a little bit, so they only get 6% of the $50 that are the benefits. And this person uses it even less, they only get 4% of that $50 in benefits. Okay, so if we come over here and we tax him at 30, okay. 30% of 60 is $18, 30% of 60 is $18, and 30% of 60 is $18, okay? 6% of that $60 in the cost is going to be $360, and 4% of the $60 in cost is going to be $240. Now, something interesting happens here, okay? They're paying $18 to get $15 worth of benefits. They wouldn't do that. I wouldn't pay $18 to get $15. All of them are paying $18 to get $15, so all of them are going to vote no. What happens down here? Well, they're paying $3.60 to get $3 in benefits. I wouldn't take that deal, right? Why essentially just pay $3.60 to get $3? That's just losing 60 cents, yeah? And same thing here, $2.40 to get $2 in benefits. You wouldn't do it, okay? Did I use a calculator to do that math? Yes. I did it before I recorded this lecture, okay? Yeah, anyways. So here, under Plan B, thank you, Eric. Welcome, brother. Programming raid. All raids are technically programming raids. Anyways. It's interesting, right? Because when we had this first plan, when we tax people according to their, to just equally, right? We end up adopting this use of our scarce resources, right? Taxing people for $60 to build a $50 road. That doesn't sound like a good use at all. Whereas now, all of a sudden, when we break it down, everybody's voting no because everybody's being taxed, taxed more than what their benefits are, right? So we can see how sometimes, even though, we like to think that, the government's the best and democracy will solve all of our issues, democracy can lead to us making some pretty bad decisions and having some pretty unproductive investments. But welcome, everybody. I was in the middle of finishing up that example. I'm I'm Prof. Weaver. I teach econ. So we're talking today about how the political allocation of resources is different than the market allocation of resources. Yeah, and I think that's the case here. What they're saying, Darth, you are taxed for things that you don't end up using. Like in the case of this road, they're paying $12 for something they're only going to use $3, right? So essentially, what you have here is these voters that are getting essentially outvoted by the majority here end up subsidizing. Jones and Smith end up subsidizing Adams, Brown, and Green, right? So what does this tell us, right? It tells us that decisions are still made at the margin, right? These guys are all voting based on, the margin here, right? If I pay the tax, what do I get, right? And if we change the rules of the game, the rules matter, right? If we use Plan A, it goes through. If we use Plan B, it does not go through, okay? Please don't clip that out of context. And secondary effects are pushed into the future on different politicians and citizens. Example, right? These dudes are totally okay spending the $12 to get $15 worth of benefits. They may even know that, this thing's going to cost $60 and there's only going to be $50 in total benefits, but it's not me. I'm not Jones. I'm not Smith. I'm not the one stuck foot in the bill here. Okay? And you have with politicians as well. Politicians are only in you have 2-year terms, okay, or 6-year terms. If you're a president, you have 4-year terms. And when you look at these individuals, you only have so many years that you're in office, right? So if you're only going to be in office for a short time, who cares if you run up the debt a little bit? Who cares? You're not going to be in there if it ever causes a problem. And if it does, it's going to be so long in the future that people may have forgotten that, you ended up, passing a bill that increased the federal deficit anyways. Yeah. So there's no assurance, there's no 100% foolproof way to assure that we're not going to be developing projects that are going to end up being unproductive. Whereas in a marketplace, the only projects that occur are profitable ones that take our scarce resources and turn them into something that we value more. Pork money. Dang it, Eric. When you talk about secondary effects being pushed into future politicians, one example could be politicians deciding whether or not to scrap public projects that have over budget and behind schedule. I feel like all public projects. Well, what's the saying? There's not been a single public project that has not failed because it did not get enough money, right? Anyways, this example right here, guys, because essentially what you end up having is that Adams, Brown, and Green, they end up getting Jones and Smith to pay more under Plan A, right? And at some point you have to realize that it's when we have all of these interest groups, campaigning to have certain regulations or certain trade deals that will make things more expensive for the general populace but help themselves. It's like, yes, you're all buying into democracy because, I get to be the beneficiary, right? I'm going to make everyone pay a little bit more so that I get to end up better off, right? And sure, I may have to pay, I may have some paper cuts myself where I have to pay into this whole democracy thing so that, I make others, better off, but I'm going to end up better off. Bastiat, that French dude that we talked about earlier with the broken window fallacy, and he also had that candlestick, the candlestick story. It's in the book. It's hilarious. You should read it. Essentially, he writes to Parliament from the perspective of a candlestick maker, asking for regulation to have people shut their windows in the daytime because the sun is taking away too much of their business. But we all live under. He has this great quote. He says, "Government is the great fiction through which everybody endeavors to live at the expense of everybody else." Right? We all think that if we just have our special interests met, that we'll be much better off, right? And because all of us are having this, we don't kind of see all of the resources that we're wasting. Oh my goodness, hiccups have been with me all day. Kill me. But that's it for the lecture. So we're actually going to